future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. You have once again turned into the #1 show on Channel 2 here at UBN Radio Network. I am your host, Walt Lusk, and we have Dr. Judy Rosenberg with us. And the show is Dr. Judy, WTF, which, those of you who are new, it's What the Freud. And we have a show tonight that's by request. It's basically on narcissistic fathers, and I want to just ask you a couple quick questions. Maybe I'm just too sensitive. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's actually just all my fault. And maybe it's true that I'm overreacting. If any of those questions have gone through your head as you dealt with your dad, maybe you have a narcissistic father. You can pull us on Stitcher and iTunes. Here, of course, at ubnradio.com. And this is a call-in show. So if anything you hear tonight hits a nerve, good or bad, we want you to call in because, as we've stated, we don't want you to explode or implode. We want you to unload. And the number is area code 323-843-2826. And you can get on the couch with Dr. Judy with your emotional ouch, who has offices in Beverly Hills and Sherman Oaks, and can obviously see you or talk to you if you can hear my voice. So we're going to just dive in here a little bit, unless, Judy, you want to say a little thing about, defining what a narcissistic father is. And, let me start this. Mm-hmm. I remember the day I learned my father was a narcissist. My mother woke me up early while my father was on a business trip and said, "We're going to the airport and taking a plane to Denver, and we are not coming back." In less than 10 seconds, the life and security I'd known for 14 years collapsed around me. I was totally alone with no hope that things would be okay. It was the most traumatic day of my life. But looking back, I realized it was the only choice my mother had. My father was very abusive, the kind that makes you feel like shrinking to the size of an ant, crawling under a rock and never coming out. But since I grew up with it, I didn't know any different. It's strange, though. Everyone knows my father doesn't think of him that way. And that's really true with narcissistic fathers. There's the inside father in the family, and then the outside father. Unlike other abusers, narcissists work behind the scenes and never in the open. They emotionally threaten and scare you into doing what they want. They use fear, guilt, and shame to weaken you and force you under their control. Do you know someone that makes you feel like this? If you do, it's an awful feeling. It doesn't go away, and it cripples you for the rest of your life.
First of all, I want to thank the person who suggested this topic.
Yes.
And
Yes.
keeping anonymity, and also just to say that we talk a lot about mother-infant disconnect. We talk a lot about the mothers, and then there's another part to this dynamics, which is the fathers. And we're going to discuss the impact of narcissism on the child, on the adult, on the male adult, on the female adult. And let's just start from the very beginning, which is a mind map I created to really track human disconnect and the effects of human disconnect on the human psyche. And if you would be so kind as to put that up.
And those of you who are listening to us, you can actually go to drjudy@wtf.com and check it out. And while you're doing that, you can go over to Facebook and like us, because we need more likes. And we're on Twitter as well. So there's the mind map. It's a 9-panel system, and I love the new definition.
Go ahead.
First 3 rows have to deal with your past. The next 3 rows deal with your present. And the last 3 rows deal with your future. But if you don't deal with your past while you're in the present, your future might not be what you want.
If you don't deal with your past will deal with you. Which is actually a line from a movie that I'm going to be shrinking in the next month called The Gift, which is
It's
very interesting
going to be
film.
wide release at the end of July, folks.
Exactly. I'm looking
That's
forward
it.
to it, and
Yes,
I guess we have parallel themes. So,
Yes,
so what I mean by that is that whatever really does stay unconscious comes back to bite you. Carl Jung talked about this. He said that whatever is left unconscious and not made conscious, we will think it is fate. And it's not fate. It's a continuation of what Freud talks about, which is what the Freud, which is what this entire theme is all about, which is that we repeat things until we get it right, and oftentimes we don't get it right. And in the case of narcissism is the end result of a wound of childhood. So for those of you who are suffering because you've had narcissistic fathers or mothers, or you yourself suffer from narcissism, which most narcissists won't admit to. So we'll probably never get a call. Hi, I'm a narcissist. I'm calling in. Oh, that's not going to happen. They don't come to treatment unless they are really finding that finding that everything's breaking down around them.
Yes. And we've done previous shows on narcissistic mothers, and you can pull them on Stitcher and iTunes, and of course UBN. And I just loaded up the show on YouTube on narcissistic mothers as well. You can watch it there.
So going back to this unfortunate wounding of the person that then demonstrates narcissistic qualities, which is the demeaning, the devaluing, and the destroying, and their families are the projection of all of these nasty feelings that they don't know how to deal with internally. So what happens in their case is they're not imploding, they're really projecting, and what happens to the people in their circle is that they're catching the feelings, they're internalizing the feelings, they're hooking into the feelings, they're buying into the feelings, and then they go down with those feelings. So it's not a pretty system. Remembering that the people that act in this way are wounded. Very wounded. They either don't get their emotional narcissistic supplies, or in the form that they're either ignored, or maybe they're made to feel too special, and maybe they're used as little dollies or little esteemers of their parents. I see that parents who injure their children this way are really living through their children and are using their children to feel better about themselves.
It's all about them.
Right.
You know, they're usually the people closest to you, and they hide in plain sight. Narcissists always make you feel trapped. I thought that was an interesting line. And they really don't care about you. It's all about them.
And they don't care not because they don't want to care. No, it's because they don't have the ability to have empathy, and that's because they've not properly been connected to. So if you look at the mind map, you could see panel 1, the wounds of disconnection, and this is where the mother and the infant don't attune. The mother does not know how to put baby before mother, and this causes the injury, or she gives the baby so many supplies, but the supplies are the wrong supplies because they're based on her needs and not his. Supplies like, why don't you look good and dress good and sound good so you can please mommy? That's not the correct supplies that a baby needs.
Well, and also, mom is supposed to be the nurturer, but the nurturer needs to be nurtured. And if dad's out being a narcissist and it's all about him, he is incapable of nurturing mom, and thereby mom gets kind of drained and depleted and is unable to nurture the child. And so there's kind of a domino effect.
Yeah, that's the system. You've got it totally right. It's a system of trickle down. So when the father doesn't give to the mother, then the mother has a harder time giving to the child, and who really suffers is the child. Well, everybody does. Ultimately, the partner does. Ultimately, the child does. And so what happens when you're around a narcissist is that you end up feeling less than.
Yeah, very much so.
And so the reason you feel less than is because hidden behind their narcissistic false self, as I call it, which looks like a self that's filled with confidence, it's really not so. They're really lacking the self-esteem. They're lacking in some way, so that being around them, you feel that you come up less than, and what they're doing in a very unconscious way is they're projecting they're projecting their horrible feelings of worthlessness into you. And so at the end of that journey, you feel horrible, and they come out on top, and it's
at
almost
your
like at your expense.
Absolutely.
So as I told a patient of mine, the better he feels, the worse you feel.
Right,
the worse
exactly.
you feel, the better he feels. So they're literally vampiring your narcissistic supplies, and esteeming themselves with the people around them. And we talked about Facebook and narcissism and Instagram. So these people like to Facebook, connect. But as we said on another episode, and check this one out because it's a good one.
Yeah, it was
Facebook.
with social media and narcissism.
Right.
It was entitled, "Does This Selfie Make Me Look Like a Narcissist?"
Yes, that one. Okay, so these people are not connecting.
Earlier this year.
Okay, they're not connecting, they're collecting. Okay, and it's very interesting because what they'll do is they'll substitute this virtual relationship with where they really do need to be putting their energy, which is into their families, and so their families suffer.
Yeah, and many times they're not around. Narcissists make deplorably bad parents. They are too focused on themselves to find children anything but an annoyance or a way to increase admiration and power. Many narcissists become parents either by accident or by some ill-thought-out, self-serving purpose. They have two faces, the one they wear in public and the one they wear at home.
I want to just elaborate on this because sometimes the people that are married to the narcissist will be very confused. Oh, my husband's so loved, or my wife is so loved, and so how come everybody else thinks that they're so wonderful, with a capital wonderful, and I feel so horrible at home? And that's because they're getting their supplies out there, and they have that home base to kind of give them the structure to go out there and literally hunt for more supplies.
And that's why it's so hard. You as have a narcissist parent, a father, you go talk to somebody about your dad, and they see your dad in action out in public, and they can't comprehend or understand what in the world you're talking about. What do you mean? You know, he's giving, and he's grandiose, and he's funny, and he's busy, and he's working, and he's contributing. Yeah, right.
Right, and oftentimes the pillar of the community,
Yeah,
which is
yep,
all very fine, except that it's out of balance. So if they were being the pillar of the community and they were esteeming their wife or husband or children, that would be another story, but it's not that way. It's completely out of balance.
And I want to say that just because someone does that, you know, they're giving in the community and they're a pillar to a community and such, doesn't mean they're all narcissists. So we want to put that in perspective, but many, many of them are. Only those close to the narcissist have any idea there is more than one face. And the narcissist children know best, all because the children, those who have the least power, are the ones the narcissists allow him or herself to be the least guarded around.
And let me talk about the effects on the children, because this is really, really very important. So imagine you're the daughter or the son of a narcissistic father who's esteeming himself outside the house, doesn't make you a top priority, will miss out on all your sporting events and so on because he's got more important things to do. And even if he doesn't slap you, hit you, beat you, scream at you, you'll probably find that by his not paying attention to you, that in and of itself is scarring. and sometimes even more so.
Yeah.
Acts of neglect, which I call acts of omission, whoops, I forgot to pay attention to my children, okay, are just as damaging, if not more, than acts of commission.
They are. They are. They're highly dysfunctional
They're
and do not allow children to question the parent or express their needs. Most narcissists treat their children badly in a few key ways: emotional abuse, excessive parental control, and parental neglect of all typical of narcissists. They typically treat their children as if they're not good enough, even when the child is doing incredibly, incredibly well. Because in many cases, the child at that point is competing with a narcissist. And the last thing they want is for anybody, child included, to be bigger, better, faster, smarter than them.
Right, which puts the child into a very horrible predicament.
Absolutely.
First of all, we speak a lot about core beliefs. What happens to the core belief of the child is that it lands in a format such as I'm not good enough, I'm not special enough, I'm not lovable enough, I'm not important enough to be number one. And that's the outcome of narcissism. Now, if you're the daughter of a narcissistic father, then this blueprints your
sure does.
your pickings, your future pickings, possibly for who you're going to pick into your life as a husband and partner, because what as Freud says we tend to do is we tend to do the what the Freud, repeat it, because in essence we're not stupid that we cycle through it again and that we pick a wounder like daddy in the form of boyfriend, husband, but that we are truly trying to heal through the wound, and we're trying to right what has been wronged. We're trying to take this core belief, and we're trying to find a person who will invalidate that horrible core belief that I'm not important enough to be number one, I'm not lovable, and turn that around. And once the person thinks that that core belief is turned around, they feel that then only will they be healed
And
from
trying
that
to
horrible
look for happy ending.
self-esteem.
Right.
Yeah, the happy ending phenomenon.
This is a
right.
call-in show, folks, and so if anything we're hearing here is resonating with you, feel a call in. I'm gonna give a list of 9 characteristics real quick, and if any one of these resonates you with your dad, call in to 323-843-2826. First and foremost, they are grandiose. They have a sense of self-importance. Second, they're preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, and ideal love. Third, they believe that they are special and unique and can only be understood by those they associate with and are special high-status people like they would like to think they are. Fourth, they require excessive admiration. Fifth, they have an amazing sense of entitlement. Sixth, they are interpersonally explosive. Seventh,
Explosive or exploitive?
excuse me. Well, they're explosive too, but
That too,
exploitive,
right.
yeah. They take advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. Excuse me.
The
They're
vampire
exploitive.
effect.
Vampire
They
effect,
vampire
excuse me.
your energy.
They lack empathy. They are unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. It doesn't matter whether it's family or employees or otherwise. 8, they're often envious of others and believe that others are envious of them. Projection, right? And lastly, they show arrogant, haughty behaviors and attitudes.
Right. And so please do call in. Love to hear from you. Would love to hear from the people who are in the dynamics of what we're describing. And we could talk about how to get out of psychological jail, if you will. There's a way out. And
There is.
And we'll talk more about that later on in the show. But just know that there really is a way out. And ultimately, narcissists will not bottom out unless there's a real crisis. And in my practice, I find that the more money they have, the more fame they have, the more beauty they have, the more things they have, the longer the narcissistic defense will hold up. And it's only when they get older and these defenses start crumbling, either because they lose their looks, or they lose their money, or people start backing away and leaving them because they're no longer sexy, they're no longer important.
Or they've
in the
alienated
public
everybody.
eyes, or they've alienated. I remember treating an older woman who was Actually, she was a very famous songwriter. She's no longer alive. And I was an intern at the time, and she came into my office. I think I told this story, but it's relevant to say it again. She came into my office, and the first thing she told me was how horrible the furniture was. Of course, I was practicing out of a clinic and was even wondering why a wealthy older woman would be at a clinic. And then she proceeded to tell me what a horrible therapist I was. And of course, I almost bought in because I was a novice and I was really questioning my abilities as a therapist. So she probably knew that, and she wanted to take me down the drain, hook me into her system, and just really demean and devalue and devour me in that session. And somehow I was able to land on my psychological feet, and I said to her, I got it. I got what was going on in my head. And I said, do you treat everyone like this? And she kind of lowered her head and said, yeah. And I said, it must be very painful for you to be alone. And she got really quiet, and I think I became her anointed therapist. I think I earned her respect in that moment, because what I was really catching was the very thing that was hurting her. Even though it feels to her like her narcissism was helping her, it really was hurting her, because her children were leaving. The waiters didn't want to come around to serve her. People were just running, just scurrying out of her life. And that's what often happens, is that the narcissist will be surrounded by people that they're not that close to, because they love to be admired, and if they have anything to be admired for, the people will flock. But the very people that they're closest to won't get a lot of their supplies, because they're really busy getting the supplies from the outside in, because they never got the supplies from the outside in. And they don't really believe that supplies come from the inside out, because mother represents the inner world. And if mother didn't give anything from the inside out, they don't believe in inside out. They just believe in outside in.
Talking about fathers here, I've got to touch on daughters and sons. So daughters of narcissistic fathers often describe feelings of unsatisfied when it comes to getting what they need from their fathers. They never get enough and would have to compete with siblings for time with dad. As a young child, dad would comment on how beautiful they were. But as the daughter grows older, he will rarely miss out at commenting on their weight or their attitude. Mm-hmm. You probably carry these concerns into childhood and found, if you found success. With dad, it was like, it's never, ever enough.
So what do you think the core belief would be, Walt? If that's the case, then the core belief in the girl would be,
I'm not worthy, I'm not enough.
I'm not enough.
I'm not
enough.
enough.
Not worthy. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
A daughter needs her dad's admiration and to be adored. It validates her and helps her internalize her specialness. Healthy fathers give their girls that gift. You are special and deserve love for being you.
So how important is that? So if you're a daughter of a narcissistic father and you're not esteemed by a man, how special can you feel to the male population when that's your blueprint, that's your role model? So then that becomes the struggle. And oftentimes what they'll do is they'll hook up with a man that doesn't make them feel special. So these are the things to watch out for, so that if that's the case, then you really do want to dismantle this horrendous core belief and get some therapy before you start dating and repeat this whole pattern and end up with somebody who treats you the same as daddy dearest.
Because their relationship, the daughter's relationship with men as they grow older, in the future is clouded by feelings of vulnerability and worries that they'll be dumped for somebody else. Anxiety, avoiding commitment, or taking on the narcissistic role are both natural ways the daughters keep the relationships, quote, safe. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, it has major impacts, obviously, in relationships. It's just awful. On sons, a son of a narcissistic father, you never feel that you can measure up. Dad was so competitive that he even competed with you, or didn't pay attention to you one way or another. You may have accepted defeat. You're never going to outdo Dad. I mean, crying out loud, he's an adult, right? Or you may have worked hard to beat Dad at his own game just to get his attention and some semblance of the fatherly pride. Yet somehow you never felt good enough even when you did succeed. You simply feel empty and second rate.
So that's the core belief of I'm not good enough.
I'm not good enough.
Right, there it is. And there's the seed level, the narcissistic father who even would compete with his son, or ignore his son, and therefore that young man does not get a blueprint of someone that's, according to the way I structured the mind map, the second panel represents the father hatching out into the world, in the outside world. And so if mother is the inside world and baby's learning how to separate and individuate, and the outside world is supposed to be dad and this welcoming person that calls out the child and pulls out his self-esteem and his sense of fun and playfulness. And if that panel is sort of blank in terms of the emotional nurturance of it, and there's no real emotional representation of a strong, empathic, compassionate father who at the same time has loving boundaries, then that young man will not necessarily have the incentive to come out and to excel and to play and to please in a good way, in a way where he gets the mirror back from the father in the form of that's great, son. I'm so proud of you. There is no I'm so proud of you, because Dad's busy being proud of himself.
He's busy proud of himself.
Right, he's looking in the mirror.
I mean, we've talked about this before. The relationship you do or don't have with your inner world is a function of the relationship you did and didn't have with your mom. And the relationship you have or don't have with your outer world is a relationship you did or didn't have with Dad.
Right.
So just like girls, sons need to be adored by their fathers and feel validated. Boys also need their dad to believe in them. You may even become the narcissist yourself. That way you get Dad's attention after all the intimidation and the high form of flattery, and you learn from your old man how to manipulate and use people.
Right, because you don't get the supplies, so what are you going to do? It's kind of like now you have to steal the supplies from other people, and you've got to get the esteem and get those likes from Facebook and have a lot of followers on Twitter and whatever it is that you have to do to feel good about yourself. And again, we need to feel that we're balanced internally. We've got to have that internal thermostat working. Internal emotional regulation is so important. And so the narcissist has none, so they're trying desperately to esteem from the outside, from the public, because they never got it from the inside.
You know, these children suffer. They spend their whole childhoods doing their best, trying to get their father's love and attention, yet they always come up empty-handed. There's always usually a scapegoat child. Narcissistic fathers often are mean and cruel to these children and let them know on a very regular basis that they are deficient, unmotivated, always wrong, and too soft. They are worthless to him and blamed for everything that goes wrong. The tyrannical narcissist father is a bully, a cruel, lying, arrogant person, and a tyrant.
And you know what's interesting is that
toxic.
they never connect the dots, so that this is fascinating. So they'll behave in this manner, and then people will start turning away from them, and then they'll say something like, well, of course I'm not going to show up at such and such an event or be there for you because you turned your back on me. So they constantly act like they're victims of their own system, really. So it's a double dungeon for them.
It's a double dungeon.
Right, and a real double dungeon for the children, too.
And if you're just tuning in, folks, you're listening to Dr. Judy, WTF, which is What the Freud, here on UBN Radio Network. I am your host, Walt Lusk, and Dr. Judy Rosenberg is the Dr. Judy. And you can pull us on Stitcher and iTunes. If you have a question about the notes that we have on the show, or you want to make a request for a show you'd like to hear us do, you can write us at info@drjudywtf.com, or a song you want us to shrink, which we're going to do a classic one later in the show. Feel free to contact us. We read everything that comes in. What I thought I would do next is there's 11 things to do to, how to survive a narcissistic father. And I think, we've pretty much identified it for the most part. So let's dive into this one. First and foremost, and this should be some big surprise, get into good therapy. You can't really dive into this and pull out all the garbage that you've been impressed upon your whole life by yourself.
And I want to elaborate on that, because who ends up with the narcissist is someone who has a very, very damaged core belief. Because if the person married to the narcissist believes that they're worthless, then they're going to hook up with the wounder. Again, they're not doing it because they're stupid. They're doing it because, number one, they don't feel deserving enough to be treated in any other way. And then on the unconscious level, they're hoping that this will all magically work through into a happier ending. And the only way that this could work through, and Harville Hendricks talks about this in his Imago Therapy, I think in his book, Keeping the Love You Find, I believe is the book. And he talks about how when you meet your imago match, your injurer, your wounder, you have this very, very strong sense that that person is your soulmate lover. And in the process of that, if you go to therapy and actually heal through the wounds and understand that you're, in a sense, the perfect fit in terms of working through those ugly, horribly injured feelings with each other therapeutically, then you can have that happier ending. Okay? And if you're not in a relationship and you've been scarred that way, then get into therapy so that you can unravel your own core belief and not be attracted to the wounder and not have to go through that entire with the Freud process.
Next is his arrogance and consistent need for ego stroking can be annoying. Accept Dad for who he is if you put him in the place in your mind. I know guys are probably better at this than girls. He may simply end up being a lovable but annoying father. Take the best as long as he doesn't still have the power to hurt you.
And that's how you take the power away, is you understand that this is not personal. This has nothing to do with you. You are not the cause of part one of your life. You are not the cause of the injuries your parents inflict upon you.
And we've said many times, childhood is a hostage situation, and unfortunately in this case it's radically true.
Yeah.
Because third, don't let Dad hurt you. I mean, it's easier said than done, but it can be done. If he has a rage attack, you may decide to get in the car and leave. Okay? You can do that. Limits are often a very good thing. Dad, quote, "This is not constructive." Because again, the one person you need to be loyal to is you. Doesn't matter what they've done, doesn't matter who they are. You are the most important thing in your life.
Right, and they don't like that.
Absolutely
they want
not.
to be the most important thing. And another thing I want to add to that is don't use the word you with someone that's been narcissistically injured. They will literally feel like you're poking them.
You mean like asking them if, have you lost weight? Or, I'm sorry, better question. Have you gained some weight?
Yeah, not
that'll,
good.
That'll really...
Or it's all your fault.
Yeah, it's your fault that I'm gained weight.
Yeah.
Okay, next is, and this one's kind of an offshoot of it, cut ties if it's too toxic or dangerous. Some narcissistic parents have violent or abusive tendencies. It goes with their self-righteousness. You are now an adult. Take care and take caution. And
another very unnoticed form of abuse, which we talk about, is neglect. So if they're so neglectful that you're just not getting anything, any value from their being in your presence, that's another reason to consider exiting stage left, because at that point, because the person has no empathy, they're going to really leave you bleeding unless, well, if you dismantle your core belief and not take it personally and have a life outside that relationship, I suppose then some people will choose to coexist in that fashion, but it's never going to be a nourishing relationship until that person gets help.
Let me expand on the neglect part, if I may, for a moment. I'm going to digress.
Mm-hmm.
There's an article, 10 things that you can help you if you have a narcissistic father. One of them is dad was not around a lot. He got a lot of gratification outside the family. They are too smart, handsome, charismatic, and talented for their own good, and they need a bigger audience, and so they're out in the big bad world doing whatever they're going to do,
Right.
instead of staying home and being with their family.
And you know, I grew up, I went to high school at Beverly Hills High School, and I really saw a lot of this because some of my peers were children of very, very successful or famous people. And so although at that time I thought, wow, how lucky their fathers and their mothers are doctors, lawyers, actors, and so on, they weren't that lucky. And the hole in the soul grew bigger and bigger. And as I saw them grow up, a lot of them unfortunately turned to drugs. Right.
Yeah.
And some of them became extremely depressed and isolated and very, very injured as a result of this. Out of the family fame, but then there was no attention within the home. It's really tragic.
Well, then the next one I want to touch on about characteristics, things can help you about a narcissistic father. Moms did most of the parenting. Because dad's gone. He's out in the big bad world.
Of course.
He's got to make the big bucks. Dad can only handle so much child rearing, plus he craves excitement. They crave excitement and enjoy the spotlight. Having an infant squirt something in their face while changing the diaper just isn't fun, okay?
Isn't exciting enough?
No, it's just not too exciting. Going to a play date with a 6-year-old daughter gets old really quick. So business calls and getting some pleasure along the side as well.
And being on the cell phone a lot and being on the computer a lot, and there's always the distraction, lots of distractions.
So getting back to ways to help you survive a narcissistic father, has dad affected your dating habits and choices? We touched about this, but it's here. Some identify with their father by becoming arrogant themselves. Others are anxious in their attachments because they could never trust dad's undivided attention. Do you date narcissistic people yourself?
Unavailable people who don't meet your emotional needs and never put you first. You end up feeling as if you were just a fly on the wall, and you end up feeling like you really don't count in their presence.
Or they've berated you enough, you feel like an ant.
Right.
Keep your expectations realistic and very low. Don't expect a relationship with a narcissistic person to be based upon something that's mutual or the reciprocity. Narcissists are selfish and can't put your needs on par with their own. As an adult, you can keep these conflicts with your father at a distance. But if you date or marry a narcissist, it will probably wear you out.
Right.
Never let a narcissist determine your self-worth. Again, you're not going to let them hurt you, and this is another expansion on that. Narcissists lack empathy and the ability to validate others, so be careful about trusting them with sensitive information or sharing important achievements because they just won't treat you with the respect it deserves.
Or they won't care, and it'll make you feel like you non-achieved. So even if you come to them with your gold stars and your medals and your excellent performances, you're going to be staring at a pretty blank mirror because it's not really about them, and so they don't care so much.
You're competing with dad at that point.
Right. They'll really take the air out of your balloon.
In fact, the last line in this says, I have seen it, the person's writing this, I have seen this backfire many times. Right? Exactly. They can't stand not being number one in every single aspect of their life.
So because they weren't mirrored, meaning their mothers, their caregivers did not esteem them and mirror them, they don't have that to offer their children, so they cannot esteem and mirror their children. And so if you've got a father that's a narcissist, do not depend on that mirror for feedback about yourself. Just get away from that mirror.
Sometimes compliance is the simplest way to deal with a narcissistic parent. It may sound cheap, but if your father is a narcissist, you may not be interested in cutting him out of your life. He is your dad, after all. Sometimes it's easier and requires less effort just to simply comply with most of his wishes. It may not be worth the fight. You're an adult now, and you are not under his roof anymore.
Right. So sometimes
You pick your battles.
That's true. I have people that I treat who are in that hostage situation, and I have one really wonderful young woman that I'm working with, and we call her life Alice in Wonderland. And so what we're doing in the case of this case is that she has a very narcissistic parent who's not child-centered, does not meet her needs, and so we've taken it from surviving Alice in Wonderland to now conquering Alice in Wonderland, and we're using every piece of her experience with her non-supplying mother as a wisdom lesson, and that's what we're doing, and that's how she's getting through it. She's learning what not to do when she becomes a parent.
Well, then the other end of the spectrum, and I like this one, but it takes some gumption. Alternately, you can assert your own authority and challenge his. Narcissists get away with their behavior because others passively allow it to be so. Sometimes you may need to adopt an authoritative stance and firmly impress upon him that his demeaning attitude is unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
You are no longer a child, and you are not as vulnerable to his rejection or his anger.
Beautiful, because what happens then is that the narcissist can no longer manipulate through the demeaning, devaluing, and destroying the 3 Ds, because there's no buy-in. So when that other partner gets healthier and is not buying into that they're not good enough or worth, if they're feeling worthless, then the narcissist no longer has control.
They have
There's
no power.
no hook. There's
no
hook.
power. There's no hook.
Exactly. So
Okay.
the boundary, I love the boundaries idea.
Absolutely.
Because, however, I just want to say, when you do set your boundaries with a narcissist, please pull from my website at, go ahead.
DrJudyWTF.com.
In the forms section, there's a peaceful healing dialogue.
It's
and
one
the
page.
way to talk to a narcissist is
Or anybody.
simply, you never demean, devalue, destroy, shame, blame, criticize, judge them. You simply come from the I position. Like, when you blah, 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 I really feel very lonely, or I really feel hurt by that. And what you then do is let the person give an attempt at correcting this particular hurt of yours, but they probably won't be able to because they don't have the tools. And then at that point you could say, well, given how you are, I'm just not that interested in being that giving to you, spending time with
being
you.
around.
Right. And being
See,
around.
it is easier than you could possibly imagine, is what we're trying to say here, to pierce their armor. It's all a facade. It really, really is.
And the armor is thin.
It's very
really thin.
Now, let me give you a real-life example of how thin their armor is. I have a friend whose ex-husband was one of the most amazing narcissists I've ever encountered, if half of what they've told me is true. And he would take his undershirts and he would take them to the cleaners. So he put on a pressed undershirt. Not his shirt, mind you. That's already a given. His undershirt, his T-shirt. And at that point, I thought to myself, my goodness, this guy is so insecure. He's got to add an extra layer to his armor, and it's simply a pressed shirt, okay? So, and you can stand firm with them, and they'll rant and they'll rave because Be prepared to push back, and that's exactly what you got to do. That's the only thing they almost understand, is because, if you're not buying into their BS, then unfortunately you're not playing their game anymore. It's not on their terms anymore, and you are standing up to them. They're going to get rattled. And the last thing in the world they want is criticism.
And loss of power.
And if they've lost their power,
Right.
believe me, they are going to try and make as much flippin' noise as they can to impress upon you that they are powerful. They have power. They have power over you. When in reality, if you don't give it to them and you push back, they don't.
So think of Superman, right? His kryptonite
Yep,
is
yep, his
right.
kryptonite,
So
exactly.
be Superman.
You're taking away a portion of their kryptonite, and obviously they aren't going to go away sheepishly, but eventually it will happen. They will run out of air. They will realize they're repeating themselves. They're a windbag, and that's all they are.
And they will stomp really hard, and they will put up a big fight, and they will be ready to clash with you oftentimes until they break down.
And eventually it will happen. It will happen. And lastly on this is dealing with it is you have to pity them. You have to pity the narcissist, because arrogance doesn't really inspire sympathy or compassion. But at the end of the day, when you think about it, you may come to pity someone who is in constant need of compliments, attention, and validation. And it's very freeing, because you don't need all that. They do. And if they don't get all that, and if they don't get it from you, they're a windbag. Okay?
Yeah.
And you've got to realize what you don't understand. Oh, yeah? Try it. It's not easy, but, here's one. Dad could rage when upset. I mean, the concept of calling a narcissistic rage, I mean, they will rage. And you don't even want to be in the receiving end of it. I mean, I've read here, even just a look is enough sometimes.
Because their core belief is that they're not good enough, so they puff like peacocks, and then they present this "I'm better than you," and the opposite is really true. And so when they start seeing that you're seeing the false self of them, and then you're not responding.
You're not playing their game anymore.
You're not playing their game anymore. They will go into a narcissistic rage, because they don't want you to know that the emperor has no clothes.
Absolutely. So remember that damage is acceptable as long as he gets his way. And if he is not getting his way, he's not going to be that charming guy anymore. He's just having a little guy with a temper tantrum.
And we've talked about not only narcissistic parents, we've talked about narcissistic family and friends, and it's the same dynamics. If you're around a friend and it's not a two-way street, if you feel that you're giving and not getting, if your friend is just a friend because they're collecting and not connecting, it's time to go.
And unfortunately, it's time for us to do our song. We got to go on here.
It's time for us.
And you've been listening to Dr. Judy WTF on narcissistic fathers. We've got shows on narcissism and social media, narcissism in Hollywood, narcissistic mothers. And there's one that's very popular on YouTube about walking on eggshells. So if you want to know more, you can check out those shows, or write us at info@drjudywtf.com, and we'd be happy to help you out any way we can.
And also, as of late, we've been doing a lot of Shrink That Film and Shrink That Play. And
well, no, we didn't Shrink That Film. We've done WTF, What the Film.
What the Film. So we're doing a What the Film on The Gift by Joel Edgerton, starring Jason Bateman and Rebecca Hall?
I don't remember the rest of the cast.
I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Then so we'll begin shrinking the movie The Gift soon, and it'll be out in wide release. And we're going to be seeing a play tomorrow night and going to shrink that next week.
And I just want to announce the name. The name of the play is The Idiot Box, and we're going to be viewing that play, and it's being played in
Soho.
NoHo.
No, excuse me, NoHo. Excuse
In
me.
NoHo, and so
North Hollywood.
hopefully we'll bring some of the people from that cast onto our show next week.
Yeah.
It's called the Idiot Box.
The Idiot Box. And our song is one we've done before, but it just fit, and we wanted to do it again. And it's Harry Chapin's "Cats in the Cradle." So I'm going to read the lyrics, and it's a tough song for me. And Dr. G is going to interpret it, and we're going to close out with a song. My child arrived just the other day. He came into the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and as he was talking, before I knew it, as he grew, he said, "I'm going to be like you, Dad. You know I'm going to be like you."
Well, we've shrunk this tune before, and I really did want to shrink it again because it's in the context of narcissistic fathers. So here's his father who's just missing it. The child arrives, and he's got planes to catch and bills to pay, and he's walking away. And then, ironically, the child says, "Dad, I'm going to be just like you," but the dad doesn't know what he means by just like you, but we'll find out.
And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, the little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you coming home, Dad? I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You'll know we'll have a good time then.
So it's always tomorrow, tomorrow,
Later,
tomorrow,
later.
promises, promises, and the kid probably does have a silver spoon because maybe the basic needs are met, but not the emotional ones.
My son turned 10 just the other day. He said, "Thanks for the ball, Dad. Come on, let's play. Can you teach me to throw?" I said, "Not today. I got a lot to do." He said, "That's okay." And he walked away, but his smile never dimmed. And he said, "I'm going to be like him. Yeah, you know I'm going to be like him."
Now, what's so very sad about that is that the son keeps this idealistic version of the father. He never confronts and never says anything about his hurting. He just smiles, and his smile never dims. It's like, that's my dad. He's great. He's great. He's great. I'm going to be like him.
And then we have the chorus again. Then we get, "Well, he came home from college just the other day. So much like a man, I just had to say, 'Son, I'm proud of you. Can you sit for a while?'" He's mellowing out a little bit. He shook his head and said with a smile, "What I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later. Can I have them, please?"
Well, perfect. This is, things come around and go around,
They
and
do.
here it is. Now the boy is just like, now he's a man, and now he doesn't have time for his dad because he turned out just like
Dad. And the cat's in the
Right.
cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you coming home, son? I don't know when, but we'll get together then. Dad, you know we'll have a good time then.
and it's all turning around.
I've
Like
long
father-son
since
karma.
I've long since retired and my son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said, "Hey, I'd like to see you if you don't mind." He said, "I'd love to, Dad, if I could find the time. You see, my new job's a hassle and the kids have the flu, but it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's been nice talking to you."
Well, he's flipping him off, just like he got
Tactfully.
flipped off when he was
Tactfully.
very tactfully.
And as I hung up the phone, it occurred to me he'd grown up just like me. My boy was just like me.
Well, the father must have had some therapy because I don't think a narcissist would have the
Absolutely.
self-awareness to realize that the son was just like him. He'd probably be angry and demeaned and devalued and destroyed and super
Defensive.
ticked off
Yeah.
that his son was treating him that way.
Yes.
How horrible his son is being.
And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you coming home, son? I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. We're gonna have a good time then. It's Cats in the Cradle, written by Harry Chapin. He says it was one of the toughest, it was a really tough song for him to write because it was really close to home. And we're going to close out with the song. You've been listening to Dr. Judy, WTF, here on UBN Radio Network, which, of course, is What the Freud. I'm your host, Walt Lusk. You can write us on info@drjudywtf.com, and you can pull our shows on Stitcher and iTunes, and hopefully soon we're going to be on iHeartRadio. So with that, God bless everyone. Until next time.